budget process involves both Prince George's County Public Schools, the county government, and the state government. And this is your opportunity tonight to hear how that process works. We have our CFO who's going to talk to us and give us in-depth information, not just about the process, but also share with us the new information that we've learned now that the governor has presented his budget to the General Assembly. And we're also joined tonight by our superintendent, Dr. Height. This event this evening, this information gathering session, is really in part a strong community school system initiative. The Prince George's County Council of PTAs was very instrumental in making this happen, as was representatives from state PTA, NAACP, and several other organizations. The thought tonight is if we know better about the process, we're much better able to influence that process and know exactly how to influence that process. So we're glad you came out tonight. We are also joined this evening by individuals who are at Laurel High School and at Surratt's High School. This event is being simulcast, as we call it, at those two other locations. So there are citizens and residents, education activists, we have advocates, community leaders that are at the other locations, the other two locations as well. So just to check in and make certain that the other locations are with us, I'm going to say hello to Surrattsville High School. Surrattsville, are you there?
Surrattsville.
Thank you. So
we're present and accounted for.
Excellent. So you can hear us loud and clear, right?
Absolutely.
Excellent, excellent. Laurel High School, are you there?
Good evening.
So Laurel's there. Laurel's in the house, and you can hear well, and we can hear you. So did we want to say hello to Laurel and to Surrattsville? Excellent, excellent. So I want to thank Bob Ross, who's at our Surrattsville location, and he's joined by several people from the Prince George's County Public Schools, and Barbara Weidman, who is with Laurel PTA. She's the president there. She's in Laurel, making certain that that site is running smoothly. Bob Ross, as you know, is the president of the NAACP. So we talked some about the simulcast process. I want to share with all of you that it's really important to turn off your cell phones because it does interrupt the equipment this evening, and we want to make certain that our speakers have your full attention. So if you would, no texting or ringing of your telephones. As I said, this is not a public hearing, it's a workshop, and as such, there's not going to be the opportunity for members that are in attendance at any of the three locations to come forward and speak, but there will be an opportunity for you to ask questions. We have 3x5 cards that are going to be circulated. All you have to do is raise your hand and someone will come to you with a 3x5 card. Stand up. Someone will come to you with a 3x5 card so that you could fill out your card and we can ask the questions. And we're going to take questions from Laurel, from Surrattsville, as well as from here. We may not have time for all of the questions, but those questions that we don't have time to answer, we're going to make a strong commitment to take those 3x5 cards with us. We have on our webpage information about the budget process, as well as the dates and times when work sessions are going to take place and public hearings moving forward. So we urge you to go to the Prince George's County Public Schools homepage and also to pose any questions to us that are not answered this evening. So without further ado, I have welcomed you, I have thanked you for coming, I have explained the process, done some housekeeping, and now to the important task of going through the work process that we engage in when we're processing the budget. Ladies and gentlemen, to say a few words to you, I'd like to introduce to you the superintendent of our public schools, the distinguished Dr. William Height.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good evening. How about a hand for Ms. Lynch? She forgot to introduce herself. Karen Lynch, thank you. Thank you for serving as the MC this evening. Thank you. And thank you for attending tonight's informational session about our budget process. We think this is critically important as we talk about our budget and how you, the citizens, individuals who are in support of our school system, our staff members, and parents can become involved. I want to first recognize some of our elected officials who are here with us this evening. So first I'll start with Ms. Rosalind Johnson, School Board Member, District 1. Ms. Johnson, thank you for coming. Ms. Carolyn Boston, School Board Member, District 6. Mr. Henry Armwood, School Board Member, District 7. Thank you all for being here this evening. I would also like to extend a special thanks, as Ms. Lynch indicated earlier, to Teresa Saunders, President of the Prince George's County Council of PTAs. Ms. Saunders, thought I saw her somewhere. And the officers of the County Council who are here. Thank you for the work you have done to help us put this program on. To Rick Tyler, Board Member of the Maryland Education Coalition. Mr. Tyler, thank you for helping us put this program on. And Bob Ross, President of Prince George's County Branch of the NAACP. Thank you to all of you for your help in putting this program on. Last Friday, Governor Martin O'Malley announced his state budget, and it included a proposed cut to education. And we're excited about the fact that it wasn't 5%, as originally suggested, but it was a 2.4% cut. And that 2.4% cut for us translates to $20 million. And that's $20 million in state aid for our school system for FY 2012. With this additional proposed cut, we could have a total cut of $85 million from where we are currently. And I think that could have a devastating impact on our system, on our students, and on their ability to provide the critical resources that they need. The good news is, however, this is the early stage of the budget process. And the other good news is that we have you here to talk about the process and how you can become involved. As the governor indicated last week when he proposed the budget, this is the first and not the last word on his budget proposal, which means that during the entire session in Annapolis, there are opportunities for individuals like yourself to become involved, to have voice, and to really advocate for the purpose of providing the resources to the students here in Prince George's County. We intend to make an unprecedented effort tonight, and this unprecedented effort is to share information about our budget, and to share it in ways that parents, staff, and citizens can readily understand so everyone can participate. This year, the budget process will be a critical part of our ability to move and continue the progress that we've made. Tonight's meeting will provide you with an overview of the budget timeline, how the budget is spent, and how you can share your input and contribute to the solution. Moving forward, we will provide a number of opportunities for you to learn the details of our proposed budget and the work with us to ensure that all students are able to graduate from our system with the skills they need to be effective as 21st century citizens. So at this point, I want to turn the program over to Mr. Matt Stansky. Mr. Stansky is going to walk us through the budget process. He's going to talk about this from the perspective of how do we receive funds, the timelines associated with that, and what are the opportunities for advocacy. In other words, at what points should we have individuals become vocal about our need to attract more funding? So without further ado, I want to once again thank all of you for coming out this evening, and I want to introduce you now to Mr. Matt Stansky, who will provide details about the budget process.
Thank you, Dr. Height. Good evening, everybody. We're going to have a PowerPoint, a brief, probably 10 to 15-minute PowerPoint presentation. We're going to walk you through the budget process, give you a little overview of how the school system gets money, how we're currently spending those funds, and what you can do to help us ensure that every dollar possible comes to Prince George's County Public Schools. And then after that, I will be here for extended period of time to help answer any questions that you might have about the budget process. So again, 4 focus areas. Revenue sources, where do we get our money? Expenditures, once we get that money, what is the process for allocating those resources? What are the key timelines in decision making, both on the revenue side and on the expenditure side? And then the timeline, or in the FY12 budget, what does our current picture look like? So here's a picture, snapshot of our total revenue picture. So in the state of Maryland, we kind of have a unique system. Most school districts around the country have their own revenue generating authority, meaning local school boards can raise property taxes, can raise other kind of taxes to help meet the needs of their students. The Maryland Constitution and the Prince George's County Charter kind of set the guidelines of how the school system receives money. So roughly 99% of our funds are really formula driven from the federal government, the state government, and the county government. So really from an administrative standpoint, from a school board standpoint, we have really no control over the type of money that comes into the district. So to give you an example, in FY 2008, the school district had a budget of about $1.68 billion. We're now looking at a budget of $1.59. That's almost a $100 million decrease over the last 3 years. Completely out of our control. It's factors of the economy, factors of enrollment, things of that nature. So again, as you can see, the majority, half of our funds come from the state of Maryland. Roughly 37% come from the county government. Another 10% come from the federal government, and then the last 1% is board sources. This next slide kind of shows you, okay, we have this pot of money. How do we allocate it? As you can see from the chart, over 80% of our district resources go to pay the salaries and benefits of our employees. We are a people-driven business, teachers, bus drivers, custodians. So the majority of our money goes into those areas. So when we're talking about contracting, when we're talking about fewer dollars, you can't, you try to focus on the non-personnel side, but when it's such a large portion, we're looking at 83% of our budget, if those dollars are shrinking, it's impossible not to impact your workforce when you're seeing dollar decreases as much as we have. This is another interesting slide that I want to talk to you about. The state requires us to budget our funds in 15 called state categories. You can see from administrative costs to transportation costs, personnel, student personnel services, health services, but I want you to focus on 3 areas in particular. Instructional salaries, so these are the salaries that we pay our instructional staff. Fixed charges, these are the benefits that we pay our staff. And special education, these are all the special education costs that go in. Those 3 categories roughly equate to nearly 80% of our total budget. So again, when you're talking about the amount of money that we have to possibly propose cutting, it's going to be very difficult not to hit those 3 areas because that's where most of the dollars are spent. Go on to the next slide. All right, so here we are, timeline. So I've talked to you a little bit about the budget process. It's very complicated, so I'm going to try to make it as simple as possible. It's one process broken into 3 sections. So there's 2 processes on how we receive money, and then there's a process on how we spend money. So I'm going to focus a lot today about how we receive money. I'm also going to go through then, once we receive that money, the process on how to spend money. So the first process we want to talk about is the state process. And as Dr. Hyde alluded to, on Friday, the governor has proposed a budget that cuts us roughly 2.4%. As you can see, that is the first step in what is a long, really 90-day process in order to get a final budget. I want to tell the group that Maryland is actually a very unique state. As we go through the budget process, the budget is then broken up into smaller sections, and that there's committee structures from the General Assembly that then review each part of the budget. And there will be a committee that looks at school system budgets. And the dates for those committee meetings have not been finalized yet, but as you can see from the chart, it's usually in the late January to middle February timeframe. But what's unique about this process is that the state of Maryland, the General Assembly, allows anybody who comes to those meetings who signs up to speak to speak. Most state legislatures do not let just the general public come in and speak at a committee hearing. The General Assembly in Maryland allows you to do so, and I encourage all of you, once we get the dates, to come in and advocate for every dollar to come to Prince George's County Public Schools. Because the more folks we get, the louder our voice is, the greater likelihood we'll see some additional dollars come our way. So hearings are held in between January and March, and then the budget goes through both the House and the Senate. Compromises are made, deals are made, and a final budget comes in and is approved in April. So what does that mean? That means half of our budget, from a revenue standpoint, is decided in April in the General Assembly. Meanwhile, we go to the second process, the county process. The county executive introduces a budget to the county council on March 15th. This is the other roughly 35 to 37% of our budget. That budget is introduced. It goes to the county council. Again, same structure. Committees are formed. The budget is broken down into sections. Education is a section. They have usually 2 public hearings regarding how the amount of money the county executive is proposing to fund the school system at. There's a law that requires the county executive to fund us at a certain level, and that level is, from a per pupil standpoint, what he gave us the previous year, he must required by law to give us the next year. So, we're encouraged with County Executive Baker that he's given us some assurances that at least we will receive those amount of dollars. However, it is important, again, once that proposal comes in mid-March, to advocate the county council members and really to advocate to the county executive to get us as many dollars as possible. Because we're in a situation in declining revenue, and every single dollar is important. Every dollar is important. And so, again, the council holds hearings from late March through early May, and then the budget is approved in late May. And at that point, finally in late May, we have our state number and we have our county number. None of this is within the control of the school board or Dr. Height. We're just, following these processes, estimating what we think we're going to get, but we really don't actually know what we're going to get until late May. Finally, the third process is how we actually expend those funds that we get. And what's ironic is, as I said, we don't really know what our number is until late May, but we have to propose something to the school board in December. So part of my job is to inform the superintendent what is my best guess as to what kind of resources we're going to get in the upcoming year. That has to be done by law by the end of December. That is what we have initially proposed to the school board. We proposed a budget of $1.68 billion, give or take, a few cents. And so now it goes through a process. So now we know Friday, governor came out with his number. So I know what number I used to propose to the school board is off. We had a number of $946 million. The governor put us in a number of $860 million. So as I'll show in a later slide, it's about an $85 million difference. So right now I know we're off by $85 million. But then through January and February, the school board holds hearings. They, again, break the budget down into sections. Each section is reviewed and questioned during what we have our budget work sessions. There's also 3 public hearings that are held throughout the months of January and February. Then by March 1, the school board has to then approve a budget that goes to the county, and then it follows that same county process as I described earlier. Next slide. So this is sort of where we stand right now. As I said, on December 20th, we introduced a budget of $1.68 billion. The governor has come out with a budget that has cut us 20.8. We also had asked for not just the same amount of funding we had the previous year. We asked for a $64 million increase because we thought it was important to let our elected officials know this is what we need to operate the school district. We need this $64 million. So not only did we not get the $64 million, we got another additional cut of 20.8, which leaves us the gap of about $85 million. After 3 straight years of cutting the budget over $100 million, we're now to the point, if this comes to fruition, we're looking at class size increases, we're looking at program elimination, we're looking at transportation cuts, we're looking at possible furloughs again, and we're looking at layoffs. I mean, it's, again, as I showed you in the charts earlier, we're so personnel driven, there's nowhere else to go. And so it's so important to have these meetings tonight to inform the public on how we get money, because I think there's a fairly good knowledge of the process on how we spend it, but a lot of times we get a lot of questions about, well, why can't you get more money here? Why can't you get more money here? And it's good for the public to understand that as a school system, we're very restricted in how we go get money. So tonight, I'm hoping I was clear enough as to how we get money and what can be done to help us receive as many dollars as possible. Again, here's my contact information, the budget director, Brent Johnson's contact information. If you have any questions that I'm not able to answer for you tonight, I'm always available via email and phone to help answer any questions that you might have. And with that, we're going to talk a little bit more about advocacy. No. Oh, that's right. We got Q&A. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot about Q&A. So yes, I'm here to just answer any questions you might have about the process. Oh, we have a question already. All right. Question is, when the county government prepares the budget, does education compete with all county dollars, or are there specific dollars which must be spent on education? A little bit of both. So yes, there is a maintenance of effort provision in state law that, again, requires the county government to fund education per student at the same level that it funded the previous year. So from our standpoint, so for instance, this year our enrollment's down about 350 students. So the county could actually give us a little bit less money and still meet the requirement because we had a smaller enrollment. But the first part of the question is, do we compete for a larger pot of county dollars? That answer is yes. So there is this minimum requirement that the county government has to give us, but there's also, these limited additional dollars. As you guys know, the county government, financially has seen revenue declines as well. But yeah, so we do compete with police, fire, transportation, environment, all those other entities for what precious few dollars that we have. All right, 2 more questions. Is there a tax dedicated to education, and if so, can it be raised, and if so, how? There are actually a couple taxes on the county side that are dedicated to education. One is the telecommunication tax. I'm sure you guys all know it. Every time you open your cell phone bill up and you see all these little extra charges at the end of it, yeah, there's a 5% tax on your phone bill, cell phones, landlines, and that money is tied directly to education. I can also tell you that the energy tax that you pay to heat your home, electricity, things of that nature, that money is also tied directly to education as well. What methods are underway to secure monies from various foundations? Oh, very good question. We're actually, Ms. Lynch, February 26th, the foundation meeting? 25th. On February 25th, we will be, Dr. Haidt is convening a group of the Gates Foundation and other local foundations and national foundations to talk about where we're going as a district, our priorities, our initiatives, and possible funding opportunities for these foundations. We already have a half dozen grants from various foundations, the Gates Foundation on teacher effectiveness, the Broad and Dell Foundation on performance management. And so we're excited to hopefully open those opportunities up as well to continue getting funding from other sources, because as you can see, we could use all the help we could get. You have one from? Oh, we have a question from Laurel.
Do we know the percent of cuts to other counties and how we can reduce our cuts or increase our revenue?
Yeah, so from a state perspective, I'm going to look into the camera, Laurel. From a state perspective, there was about probably 12 to 13 counties that actually were cut education funding, and there are about another 11 to 12 that actually saw an increase in funding. And again, that's based for the most part on their enrollment. So school districts that saw an increase in enrollment saw a slight increase in their revenue, whereas districts who saw a decline in enrollment saw a decline in their revenue. I saw declines as high as 9-10% in some of our smaller jurisdictions around the state. Ours was 2.4%. And then again, I think we'll talk, Ms. Saunders will talk a little bit later on strict advocacy, but again, it's about getting to your elected officials, both at the state and county levels, to really advocate the need for more money for our school system. Did I answer the question? Do we have Surrattsville?
Yes, Surrattsville. The question that we have, Mr. Stansky, is how do the Race to the Top funds impact the budget?
Well, we're very excited about winning Race to the Top. It's $25 million over a 5-year period, and it's going to fund a lot of our teacher effectiveness initiatives and going to help continue fund some of our programs that have been successful, like advanced placement and our IB programs. Unfortunately, while the money is wonderful to get, it's restricted in nature. And when I say restricted, I mean it has to be spent on specific purposes. So it really cannot be spent on closing a budget deficit. It has to be spent on things that are required by the grant program and the federal government.
Thank you.
Right. Yeah, I should point that out. That Race to the Top really could not be spent on compensation since it was sort of one-time short-term money. We have more cards. All right, more questions.
Another question from Laurel.
All right, Laurel.
How do I obtain contact information for the elected officials that I should contact?
Actually, there's a website. It's called mdelect.net. And if you put your address into that website, it gives you every elected official from federal to state to local to school board. So it's a very good website, very useful. And once it gets you that list, you look for, on the state level, obviously your state senator and your state delegates. Usually we'll have 1 senator and 3 delegates. And then those will be the folks that you initially want to start with. And then as hearings come up, we'll tell you which pertinent committees that are hearing the budget and who sits on those committees and how to advocate to get those folks to understand that our school system needs increased dollars.
Also, Matt, various school board members have district websites that have this information on it, so I can share that information too.
Absolutely. Yeah, a lot of our school board members have websites that folks can go to that has a lot of this information on it as well. Who we got?
An additional question from Surrattsville High School, and the question is, when will employees know if there will be a RIF, a reduction in force?
Well, obviously, we're going to try and avoid that at all costs, but we're going to keep communicating with employees through the winter, but not until really that the board votes on our final proposed budget in late February will we then know whether a potential RIF will be in effect. Now, obviously, then the state comes in with an approved number in April and the county in May, so it won't be really, really official until that final county number comes in. But if one were to happen, we'll have a good indication in late February or early March, and we will send out, obviously, communications on the process that will follow over the next 3 months unfortunately, if a reduction in force were to happen. All right, I have some questions on the cards here. I don't want to hurt our folks from Flowers here. It says, doesn't the Maryland Constitution guarantee equitable funding? Well, the one thing that the Maryland Constitution does guarantee is funding for education. Now, obviously, when the Constitution was written some 400 years ago, the state government has expanded since then and has added more responsibilities. But from a constitutional standpoint, the only mandated thing that the state government must fund is education. But you know, as the government has grown over time, it has increased its responsibilities. Why it is that we should get that share of the dollars. I'm gonna do another one here. While there are limitations on the revenue we receive from the federal, state, and county, what are limitations on the funds that the BOE can solicit? Well, we're a nonprofit organization, so we can't technically generate, we can generate revenue enough to the point that covers the expenses that cover the revenue generation. So, sorry about that. See, you know, they got a box up here for Dr. Hyde. I didn't get anything. But that's all right. So as a nonprofit, we can't just go out and make money. So let me give you a good example. So we rent out a lot of our schools on nights and weekends. And folks think that it's a revenue generating. Isn't the camera supposed to follow me? It's all right. But right, I got you. So when we rent out our facilities, we can only charge for what it costs us to run those facilities, meaning the salaries for custodians, the utilities in that building. So we can't use it as a profit-generating mechanism. We can only charge for what it costs us to run those buildings. So it's the price of being a nonprofit. I don't know if any of you work in the nonprofit world, but that's the price you pay. Laurel?
Mr. Stansky, question from Laurel. Where can I find all the budget details?
Well, we have a budget document that's produced 3 times a year. We currently have a document for the proposed budget in December. We have, due to budget constraints, we don't print as many copies as we used to, but if you go to pgcps.org/budget, you can find it online. And as far as the state, if you go to maryland.gov, that will have all the pertinent information on the state budget, as well as Prince George's County MD.gov will have all the pertinent information on the county budget.
Stansky, question from Surrattsville High School. When the county government prepares the budget, does education compete with all other county dollars, or is there specific dollars which must be spent on education?
People are asking the same questions. That's all right. So there is a specific amount of money that the county is required to give us. It's called the maintenance of effort formula. Basically, give the same amount per student as you did the previous year. However, yes, over the large pot of money, we do compete with police, fire, transportation for any additional money that may be available. All right, I'm going to ask another one. Let's see. Ask that one. How is the budget reconciled? Okay, let me try and take a 2-month process and answer it in 30 seconds. So basically what happens is we propose a budget numerous times, again, based on state and county revenues. But at the end of the day, when the county finally says, okay, this is how much money you're getting, the state says, okay, this is how much money you're getting, we have to go back as a district and say, here's what the board approved, here's what the county approved, and in my short time working, it's always different. And so then in the month of June, the administration has to go back to the board and say, okay, here's all the money that we're getting, here's what we thought we were going to get. If there's a difference, we have to then come up with a reconciled budget that reconciles us to the county number, because the county is the ultimate, really, fiscal authority of the board. And therefore, then if it's more money, which would be great, we'd add money to the budget. But if it's less, we'd obviously have to come back to the board in June with more budget cuts.
Mr. Stansky, another question from Laurel High School.
Yes.
Do school system employees work for the county or for the state?
Neither. We are actually, we're technically part of the state government, although we're not state employees, we are school system employees. So we're not county employees, so we have our own, personnel rules as part of our negotiated contracts. We are in the state pension system, but as far as compensation structures, whether we're furloughed, whether we're not furloughed, is really a school board decision. So let me follow up. So when you hear things like county employees are getting this, you have to always back out school board employees, because we're not county employees.
Question from Surrattsville? Yes. How can we get for Prince George's County a tax dedicated to education?
Okay, well, we have a couple already. I said the telephone tax is one. The energy tax is another one. So there's always a possibility you can propose to increase those taxes. Usually those taxes, for the most part, in Prince George's County, taxes have to go to referendum to be voted on. But there are some cases like the telephone tax where either the county council or the the General Assembly can increase those taxes just through the legislative process, through a vote.
Another question from Laurel High School.
All right, Laurel.
Can I participate and speak at the General Assembly work sessions?
Yes. I mentioned earlier in my presentation that the Maryland General Assembly is one of the few legislative bodies in the country that actually allow you, the general public, to sign up to speak. And we will keep you all posted as to when those hearings are on education and encourage everybody to come out and speak. All right, I'm got a question here on the card. Said that I mentioned that the $64 million figure included cuts already from the 2010-11 school year. What is the actual difference between the 2010-11 school year and the 2011-2012 school year? So when we talk about budget gaps, I'm gonna turn to professor mode here for a second. So when we talk about budget gaps, oh yeah, I forgot. Camera can't follow me. I forgot. I'm gonna better nail my feet into this ground. But so when we talk about budget gap, there's really two major factors that influence a budget gap. One is straight revenue. That means how much money we received from last year to how much we received this year. That number right now is like $85 million. But there's more to that. So that just assumes that all your costs remain neutral. And we know, that health insurance does not stay neutral. We know utilities don't stay neutral. I mean, you just look at, if you just managing your household budget, you know that there are costs, there are fixed costs that stay the same year to year, and there are costs that increase year to year. As your car gets older, it costs more to maintain it. As you go from year to year, gas prices go up. And, we're not unlike any other private industry business. Our health insurance costs go up 8 to 12% every year. So you're talking, that's $12 to $15 million right off the bat of additional money we have to find every year just to pay our health insurance bills. So, so try doing that on top of not actually getting more money, but actually losing money. Again, it goes back to the household budget. You then you look at what your expenses are, you look at the money coming in, and you're like, well, it's not adding up. I have a gap. And you have to then make adjustments in order to balance your budget.
I have a question from Surrattsville.
All right.
How do we know that Prince George's County Public Schools is operating efficiently regarding cuts?
Efficiently regarding what?
Regarding the cuts.
Oh, how do we know we're operating efficiently? So in a couple ways. So we've instituted for 2 years now a performance-based budgeting model, which means, so before, the way we used to budget is called incremental budgeting. So everybody used what they had the previous year as their base, and instructions would come out and say, hey, add 2% or cut 2%, without any sort of strategic look at how the school system's operating. So if you actually look at that budget document that I talked to you about earlier, every single dollar is tied to a performance outcome in that book. So every department head has to identify what their core work is, what objectives they want to meet for the year, how are they going to measure meeting those objectives, meaning what outcomes are they going to look for, and what dollars, people, resources are tied to those outcomes. And so by doing that, we're able to sit down and say, okay, what is really our priorities? When in budget times like this, you really have to prioritize, and you say, okay, what are the top 2 or 3 things that we want to do? High student achievement, and make sure there's a highly effective instructor in front of every child in our classroom. And if you're not on board with doing one of those 2 things, if your metrics aren't tied to one of those 2 things, then we have to look and see, and wonder why we're doing some of the things we're doing. So that's kind of the process we went through, and we continue to go through and continue to refine daily.
Another question from Laurel. What happens to the budget during the several months of the General Assembly?
What happens? Well, as I kind of went through in the presentation, it goes through a series of hearings. So the governor just proposed it on Friday. Then it goes for the next 2 months, a series of hearings both in the House of Delegates and in the State Senate. The budget may be amended, changed, may stay the same, money may be added, money may be taken away. But at the end of the day, there's really like 4 to 5 hearings that the public can participate in the budget process. And like I said, once we know those dates specifically, especially on the education hearings, we'll ensure that the public knows to come up and sign and speak and advocate for Prince George's County.
Surrattsville?
Surrattsville.
Okay, the question is, with salaries and compensation being the largest part of the budget, can you tell us what area are taking the largest percent of the cuts?
So we're still in the beginning phases of the budget process. We'll be giving a more detailed proposal probably next week to the Board of Education, now knowing what the governor's budget is. As I showed in the slide, areas of consideration are going to be furloughs, reduction in force, program elimination, transportation. You have to, when you're talking about money of this magnitude, you have to put everything on the table. And again, it's about prioritizing. What are we, what are the true priorities of the district? What do we have to ensure that we're going to fund? And what then is there a possible reallocation opportunity?
An additional question from Laurel High School. Will Mr. Stansky's presentation be posted on board docs?
Always. Everything goes on board docs. We're very transparent here. So, and it's actually on the web page right now. So, yeah, we'll actually make sure and put it on board docs as well. And any presentation I make to the board during work sessions, public hearings, they'll all be available to the public. All right, I have a couple questions here. Where's the money from the lottery, and how much has been set aside already from lotteries? That's a good question. I'm wondering myself. So here's how lottery money works in the state. Is it just goes into a larger pot of general fund, so it's like an income tax, a property tax. It's not dedicated towards education, although they say it's supposed to be. It just goes into a larger pot of money. And just so you know that the majority of lottery revenues come from this county, and we don't see that money coming back. And if you're talking also about the slot machines, that is a good question. Again, I don't think one is up and operational yet. I think one is close in Arundel Mills, but I know that it was sold as to help education funding, but obviously with it being slow to being implemented, the state has certainly not seen any revenues as far as lottery terminals yet. And then I'm going to do another question here. It says, how much will Prince George's get from the $250 million given from the federal government to fund turnaround? The answer to that question is I don't know yet. It's an application process this year, so it's a little more competitive for those dollars, but we do have an application in, and we're hoping to get a fairly large portion of it.
Mr. Stansky,
Ms. Lynch.
I want to share with you that Iowa is the only state in the country that completely solely dedicates 100% of its lottery funds to education.
Well, there you go. You learn something new every day. The state of Iowa. Oh, yeah, I'm going to repeat it. Of course. That the state of Iowa is the only state in the country that actually dedicates 100% of its lottery revenues to education. Virginia has a designated percentage, and I think when lotteries first started, that was the selling point. But then, trust me, being a budget guy, I know how this works. You start losing revenues, and you start looking to other places to fund holes. And I'm sure that the lottery has always been used as a pot of money to fill gaps in other areas. Okay, I have another question here that says, where can I find out about specific program cuts, i.e. physical education, middle school athletics? Again, in the budget document that is on the website, pgcps.org, it has specific cuts. Unfortunately, given what the governor just proposed on Friday, we're going to have to come back to the school board with further reductions. When that presentations will be made, we'll let you know, and the presentation will be on the website as long as other data about specifically what will have to be cut from the budget to balance it.
From Surrattsville High School.
Surrattsville.
I'm interested in writing to my senator, my delegate, county government. What exactly should I say in my letter or email?
I'm going to go ahead and I'm not going to not answer that question, but after me is someone who will answer that question more intelligently than I can. It's Miss Teresa Saunders. So if individual from Surrattsville will wait to hear Miss Saunders give a presentation, I think she will be able to detail more thoroughly what it is that we're going to be asking for. I know high level, we need more money. But specifically how to do that, how to advocate for that, we will certainly get into that. All right, I have, let's see, a couple more questions here. While there are limitations on revenue we receive from the Fed, state, and county, what are the limitations on the funds that the BOE can solicit? Well, it depends. So when we talk about foundational funding, a lot of times the foundations always may tie the funding to specific things too. So the key on our end really is to tell the foundations, hey, here's what we need funded. You know, come in and help us out and sell it. And so that's kind of the strategy we're going to go with in late February, and hopefully, you know, by the early time in the summer, we'll have some positive news on the foundational front and foundational support for our school system. What's that? All right, we have more lottery clarification. The lottery legislation reads that funds, this is a classic lawyer trick here, funds may be used for schools, not will be. So you have this little, you know, it's the semantics. You know, when you use the word will be, that's usually a guarantee that the funds have to go to the schools. But you use the words like may or shall, then it leaves it open for interpretation. And then lawyers love interpretation. That means you got to pay them $400 an hour, and you know, to interpret things. But all right, more questions. Can the budget be affected by the fact that we rank 24th out of all the other counties in the state? All right, so I need to address the 24th in the county, 24th in the state first of all. Since Maryland's such a small state and such an affluent state, we always get compared because there's so few jurisdictions. But what we always like to do is compare ourselves to like districts around the country. And if you compare us to like districts around the country, we do pretty well. Do we have challenges? Absolutely, we have challenges. Do we have room for improvement? We absolutely have room for improvement. But when you look at us compared against other large urban districts, we fare pretty well. But to answer the question more specifically, no, the funding is not based on any sort of ranking that may or may not be out there as far as our comparisons with other jurisdictions in the state of Maryland. And then a follow-up, oh, this is a big one. Will pension costs be passed to the county this year? Governor's proposed budget has not passed on any pension costs to the county. If you listen to some powerful legislators, though, that they may also still try and push it. It's a problem that's really twofold. One is the state has a budget problem in itself, and it's trying to fix that, but then there's a pension funding problem. But passing costs on from one jurisdiction to another does not solve the larger problem, which is the funding level of the pension itself. And so really I'm hoping, and what the governor has said, is they need to focus on that part, how to get the pension whole as opposed to who pays for what. So hopefully that problem gets solved first before costs just get shifted onto local jurisdictions. Two more questions.
An additional question from Surrattsville High School.
All right.
Okay, and the question is, I'm very much interested in being a part of the public participation process that is sponsored by the Board of Education. How exactly do I register to actually get on the agenda to speak?
I believe you, if you just call or email the board office, that they will put you on the list to speak. And I will get the phone number here momentarily. And 301-952-6116. So if you just call the board office, usually we like to do it the day before the actual hearing to get on by 4 o'clock. by 4 o'clock the day of the meeting, and they will get you on to speak. All right, looks like I have got some active folks here, flowers. All right, under what circumstances would the county government and state government dip into their rainy day funds to infuse needed cash into their revenue pot? Man, I wish I had the answer for this one. That's it. You know, it's not up to me. That's always a tough call for any sort of elected official or any sort of high-ranking government official. To me, it's pouring outside. At least for us, it is. And so you have a rainy day fund for days like this. But at the same time, it does, you know, your reserves, your savings do affect how your bond rating is, how Wall Street, how willing people will be to lend you money. And that's a lot, you know, very important for state and local governments, because that's how they fund school construction projects, police stations, the roads you drive on, is all impacted on their ability to borrow that kind of money cheaply. And so Wall Street does not look kindly when you're continually raiding that fund. But at the same time, you have to, it's about priorities again. So you know, you have to balance whether paying a lower interest rate to build a new road goes up against laying off 200 teachers. So what's the trade-off? But you know, and again, the other problem with dipping in a rainy day, it's one-time money. So you know, you especially don't like to use it for compensation, because that money's not going to be there the next year. It's only going to be there one time. So again, I always equate to, you know, $1.6 billion or $50. You know, if you're managing $50 and you have a savings account of $20 to dip into, and you got expenses of $60, what do? Do you try to go out and maybe cut your expenses? Do you try and raise money by getting a second job, or do you dip into your savings account? And those are the dilemmas that you have to face. All right, another one. With skewed information being presented via the media about how, quote, much money we make, how can we get county residents to speak up on our behalf of students when it seems as though salaries are the driving force regarding the budget? It's a good question. You know, one of the things is when you work for a government entity, you know, what you make, what you do is public knowledge. And so, you know, the newspaper found the need to print all our salaries in the newspaper, and that's their right to do so. But, you know, I've found in the 3 years working for the school system that, you know, this is the hardest working group of people that I know, very dedicated, you know, but we're talking, so you just push back a little bit. You say, look, we have not had a salary increase in 3 years. Not only did we not have a salary increase, all my stipends, all my differential pay was cut. Not only was my pay frozen, but last year I had to take a pay cut because we had furloughs. So, you know, it's so to put the perception on that employees in the school district aren't sacrificing. I mean, I know the state employees have taken a furlough. I know the county employees have taken a furlough, but state employees have taken, our school system employees have taken their share too. Meanwhile, we're surrounded by jurisdictions who are giving raises, you know, keeping their stipends in, keeping their differentials in, only paying 5% for health insurance, where ours is paying 25%. And so, you know, so on face value, yeah, you look in the newspaper and my salary's there, and, you know, wow, you're way overpaid. I can't believe how much. But, you know, for the work we do and for the sacrifices the system employees have made the last 3 years, I think you just kind of have to push back a little bit and say, no, this is what we've done. Compare us with our neighboring districts in Montgomery and Anne Arundel and Charles and what their employees have had to sacrifice. And I'll guarantee you it's nowhere near what our employees have had to sacrifice. So I think you just push back and say, you know, we do difficult work. It's not easy, but it's very rewarding. And, you know, so I deserve to be compensated fairly. But we've made sacrifices, and we've done it. So that's how I'd answer that question. I could go on about that one, but it's all right.
I have an
How we doing
additional
over there,
question
guys?
from Surrattsville High School
Okay.
from the audience. The question is, who determines the budget for each school throughout the county?
That's a good question. So each school budget throughout the county is determined by a staffing formula, which is based on enrollment. So, and that's, you know, again, staffing drives about 80 to 85% of a school budget. And the discretionary money that we talk about that schools have for professional development is also driven by the number of staff they have in the school. So there's a certain dollar amount. It's a formula. So if you have 300 kids, let's say in an elementary school, you get X number of teachers, a principal, secretary. But you can find all that information in the budget book. There's a section in the budget book called School Operating Resources that details each school-based position and how it's allocated to each school. And it's 95% of the time it's based on the enrollment of that school.
Thank you.
Laurel, anything? Because I got another question here. Question.
No additional questions at Laurel.
All right. Question from Flowers. Why not have grant writers, fundraisers for a larger basis? Okay, so well, we have both. We have an office that's called Strategic Planning and Grants Development. Part of their role is to seek grants, write grants, and it's not just their role, it's everyone in the district. A lot of folks in academics continue to write grants. We have hundreds and hundreds of grants. Another plug for the budget book. Every grant that we have is in the budget document. So if you open that budget document, it'll show you every grant that the district has received over the past year or plans to receive in the upcoming year. As for fundraising, we do actually have a strategic business partnership office that is not real large, but does good work, and so they are also continuing to help, seek out partnerships with our business community to ensure to, get all the help we can. Laurel, Surrattsville, anything else?
No additional questions from Surrattsville High School.
Oh,
No to Laurel also.
We got an active group here. We got one more question. Looks like it. Another question from Flowers. Says, with the new administrative procedure in place regarding employees taking leave without pay, subject to termination after the second time leave without pay is used, how much money does Prince George's County propose they will have coming by June once projected employees have been terminated? That's a good question, and to be honest with you, I don't know if it's something we've costed out yet, but I will tell you that absenteeism is an issue in our district that costs us dollars. Last year we spent over $40 million in substitute costs, and so this is our first attempt to help curb abusive leave. And so, because when leave like this is taken, we usually end up having to fill that position with a permanent sub or another full-time teacher or bus driver or whatever, or budget analyst, whatever position it may be, because that work still has to get done, and even though that that employee is not there. So, good question though. All right, are we all set? Anything else?
I think so. That's it for Laurel. Surrattsville, did you have any additional questions?
Additional questions from Surrattsville.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, thank you. So, ladies and gentlemen, can we have a warm round of applause for Mr. Stansky?
Hey, I apologize for moving around so much, guys. That's just how I speak.
We think you did an outstanding job fielding all those questions. Again, if anyone has additional questions that they'd like answered, definitely send them to us. If you have a question that was not answered tonight, we're going to answer some of those questions and place those answers on the web. We have a growing section on our web page, our homepage of the PGCPS web, that identifies a good deal of information about the budget. Mr. Stansky told you how to access the county and the state budget, and that web page is going to be equipped with frequently asked questions, and it's going to continue to grow over time so that everyone is as informed as possible about this process. So thank you, Mr. Stansky. Excellent, excellent. Now, ladies and gentlemen, several of the questions that Mr. Stansky could not answer are questions that we really believe need to be answered by members of the public. We've got at Surrattsville Mr. Bob Ross, who is president of the NAACP, and he's very, very active with our advocacy effort here in Prince George's County. We also have a member of the PTA at Laurel High School. But here at Flowers, we have an exceptional individual, Miss Teresa Saunders, and she is the president of the Prince George's County council, PTAs. And she is someone who I have grown to enjoy working with. As Dr. Height said at the top of our program, we work very, very closely with parent organizations because the involvement of parents and community into the process that we are engaged with is extremely important. And so without much further ado, I want to introduce to you Ms. Teresa Saunders, who's going to talk to you about some of the active ways that you can become involved as citizens, residents, and community members in Prince George's County and help us with this budget process, because it's absolutely important that we all work together on this effort. Ms. Saunders?
Much, Karen. And before I get started, I must say, being president of the council is not something I can do by myself. It is a collective effort. I have a fantastic executive board that is very, very busy. The first vice president, Carmen Braxton, is here, if you can stand. Our second vice president, Mr. Michael Sedgwick, who has students at Flowers, if you please stand. Okay. And I also see several PTA, PTSA presidents in the audience. If you all can please stand, I want to thank you all for coming out, because we're going to be leaning on you all a lot. You all put in a lot of volunteer time and efforts. Thank you very much. And also, we have Rhonda Chandler is over at Surrattsville. She is our recording secretary for the council. And we have Letitia Corey, who is over at Surrattsville also, and she is our corresponding secretary for the council. And of course, I believe she already introduced Bob Ross, who is president of the NAACP. And we have been working very, very closely with Bob during the last few months, because we've all realized this is a collective effort. It used to be the facet whereby it takes a village to raise a child. It still does. And a lot of people have forgotten that. So we want to help them understand that that's what it takes. We have a huge percentage of single parents raising children in our communities now. That is a very difficult task. And of course, we have to work together to get it done. We have to stop the finger pointing, trying to figure out why it's wrong. We have to figure out how we can make it right for our kids. And that's why our motto we picked up was keeping our eyes on the prize, our youth. So in looking at that, we want to make sure, first of all, everyone takes into consideration the dates that we have for public hearings here in our county for the budget. We want parents to come out, ask your questions, come out, be heard. Let it be known that our parents in Prince George's are very concerned about the future of our kids, because they are our future. At this point in time, most of us have made it to where we're going to be. It's time for us to worry about what they're going to be doing. They expect us to present the role models, etc., to get where we need to be. Okay? So the first facet, of course, are the school board hearings. Then, as Matt said, you have the county council hearings. And of course, you all know how to get in touch with your school board representatives and your council. But the biggest global element that's going on at the same time are those state hearings with the General Assembly. Some organizations we collaborated over December, because we know this cycle comes around every year. We don't have to wait till Matt puts out that budget. We can get started. We got started over the Christmas holidays. As I said, working with the NAACP, working with the SCLC, working with the chambers to talk about what things can we do together to start looking at our community, because we have phenomenal resources in Prince George's, but sometimes we forget and how to utilize and how to network that. So one thing we talked about is when it comes time for those General Assembly hearings, there was a time a while ago, and Bob reminded me of this, and so did Michael Sedgwick. Remember we had those buses that went up to Annapolis, and we filled the whole street, the sidewalks, everywhere. And people, it was cold, but we were all there, and it was wonderful. People, you know, the camaraderie, the collaboration, the community effort to let people know Prince George's is concerned about education in Prince George's. Well, guess what? It's time for us to do that again. And at that point in time, not only did we go, but, and this was about 7, 8 years ago, but our children went too. So we're in the process of trying to do something of that level again. But it's going to be two-tiered. Yes, we're going to go. And yes, before that, we want to do the emails, the faxes, etc., to let them know we're concerned and we need state funding. And we don't need the state funding cut. We're going to do that. We're going to organize the buses. But then we're going to call for a special day that's going to be time for our youth to be heard. We're going to let them go and speak before the General Assembly and explain why they need funding for their education. So of course, we will be getting in touch with he was our former school board student rep, but he is the youngest member on the board now, and the other board members, to help organize this, and our student rep to help with that, and of course our PTAs, our community organizations, our business organizations, and our political organizations to help pull this together. We think it would be great if our youth can go up and explain, and you know, they're very articulate. They're very savvy when it comes to texting and emailing, etc., and explain why education is important to them. And I think we should give them that opportunity. So of course, we have to work with you all on that and on selecting the dates, etc. We would like you all to make sure that if one of our organizations, if we do not have your emails, please make sure, because we don't have all of the emails for all the community organizations. We want to make sure we're able to get the information and the dates out to you all when we have these different dates coming up. We'll be working with the school system because they've been kind enough to post a lot of our activities when we have certain dates coming up. But you can email the council, PTA council, to make sure we have that at PGCPTAC. It stands for Prince George's County PTA Council. .CORRSEC. That's our corresponding secretary. She maintains the database. Okay? At gmail.com. So we can make sure we're maintaining the list to get the information out to you. We want it to be obviously, this is going to be a very quick effort during the month of February and March. I believe, as Matt said, that's about the timing of the General Assembly meetings. So we want to make sure that they're able to do that at that time. And as I said, we'll coordinate with the school system for a day when the children are out so that they can go up and speak for themselves. You all have any questions? And of course, we are welcome to suggestions, so please email your suggestions. As we said, this is going to be a collaborative effort for our county to bump it up to show how we can pull together. Did I miss anything?
If you could give your web page, your email address just one more time.
One more time?
Yes.
Okay. If you think of Prince George's County PTA Council, PGCPTAC CORRSEC at gmail.com. Okay?
Excellent. Thank you so much, Mrs. Saunders. Everybody, a round of applause for Mrs. Saunders. Excellent. We're coming to the close of this workshop. I hope all of your questions have been answered. Certainly, we've learned a lot about the budget process. Just a couple of things that I have to share with you. Number one, I'd like to recognize one of our school board members who joined us after the start of our program, but is very, very much involved with this effort and is a very hard worker. I think Mrs. Saunders made mention he served on the school board for 2 years prior to becoming an elected board member, Mr. Edward Burrows. Is he here? There he is. Good evening, Mr. Burrows. Thank you for joining us this evening. Also, I wanted to give Surrattsville and Laurel the opportunity to recognize if there are any elected officials at the Surrattsville or the Laurel location.
No elected officials at Surrattsville.
No elected officials at Laurel.
Thank you, Laurel. Thank you, Surrattsville. That's also my opportunity to say to all the folks at Surrattsville, congratulations. Thanks for coming out. We're so glad that you participated in this effort. And the same to Laurel. Thank you so much. This was a new endeavor for us. We did it for the convenience of residents, citizens, education advocates across our county, with hopes that more people would be able to participate and travel less distance but still be engaged in the process. So thank you all for coming out. Thanks to all the staff there at the 2 locations for making this happen. So thanks, Laurel. Thanks, Surrattsville. Also, this is a great opportunity in closing to really extend to everyone here our thanks and our appreciation for coming out. I want to share with everyone that this workshop has been taped, and it's going to be available on Channel 96, thank you so much. And on Verizon, I guess that's Fios, that's Channel 38. You see who doesn't have cable. Channel 96 and Channel 38. And you can check www.pgcps.org to find out the viewing guide for when this is going to be aired. Also, it's going to be available on our webpage as well, because we want as many people as possible to be able to tune in and hear how this process works, the budget process, and how they can become more involved with influencing that process. I'd also like to recognize the president of our local chapter of SCLC, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. Mr. Arthur Bishop is here this evening. Mr. Bishop, where are you? There you are. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Finally, I know I thanked him. I thanked him several times, but I really have to thank Matt Stansky again. Just imagine this. He keeps track of billions of dollars. I think it's a fantastic thing that he does each and every day, and I'd like to thank Mr. Brent Johnson, who is his budget director, who's also here with him. We are going to add the information, as we said earlier, to our board docs so that it'll be available when you access the board docs as well. And we are going to add the names of the individuals that signed in this evening. When you signed in this evening on your sign-in sheet, you provided your name and you provided your email address. We're going to add that information to our listserv on budget issues so that you will continue to receive updates on the budget process. So the one thing that I do ask is, if your name wasn't necessarily as legible as it could be, or if your email address when you signed in was not as legible, when you are walking out, if you could please clarify that information so that we can certainly have the most accurate information possible to be able to update our listserv, and you'll receive that information by email. So again, ladies and gentlemen, we are about to close, and I'm extremely thankful that you all came out today, and I'd like to bid you adieu and say thank you and good night.